Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to another one of our live shows where we get to answer MCQs, not from anywhere, but from the SRA's sample. Yes. So we are from a different location today. So this is the office in the building where I'm normally working from, and yes, I realize now that I'm coming to you in a kind of Robinson Crusoe outfit. Yes, I look like a wild man that's been kind of marooned on an island. Maybe probably because it's how I feel. But anyhow, maybe I'm gonna consider shaving for our next live. Shall we take a vote on this? Does my physical appearance matter to you guys? Are you here for the content or are you here for my looks? Yes. If you're here for my looks, I can try and make some effort next time and kind of, turn up in a different outfit. So hopefully this is not the case. Right. So what are we here for? We are here to do some SQE MCQs. Hopefully everybody is still feeling positive about their preparation for the SQE. The majority of people we've got engaged are after the January sitting. We've got, oh, cool. We've got a colleague watching us live. Hello, thank you for joining. It would be great if you guys let me know if you are aiming for the January 2026 sitting of SQE1 or whether you're going for the later one in the summer. I think we've had enough time. It's been a couple of weeks now that they've announced the the statistics of the pass rates from the July sitting. I think we probably all had the time to recover from that shock. I've made a tripleta, like three shorts where I'm complaining about this, and I identify the three. Oh, okay, cool. We've got somebody saying in the chat January. Thank you. I have identified three culprits from the problems that we're having in our SQE preparation. Culprit number one being our friends at the SRA, of course. Culprit number two being the prep schools themselves and the entire domain that is sort of untransparent and it doesn't give people enough tools to prep properly. And number three is us, the people around here. Yes, it's the law schools that do a terrible job in preparing people for the SQE. So if you want more information about this, have a look at these three shorts that I published. They're taken from a live stream that I did for our closed members community, but the shorts are available for everybody. Right. So it is, I don't know, not a particularly bright day today. What do you think? Which part of the world are you guys connecting from? So I am currently in central London, very close to the BBC building on Regent Street, which is a lovely location. And I've got a wonderful view facing south. But what I can see is a relentless cloud, which probably means I'm going to get wet on my way back. Sorry. I've got the rather inappropriate magazine. Look, I'm gonna show this to you quickly, but then we don't want to be showing kind of strange imagery or saying the word strange imagery because then YouTube is gonna restrict this and people won't be able to see it. So what am I gonna do now? I'm gonna have to drink sideways. Right. So are we ready for some MCQs taken from the SRA's own sample? Again, if you're regulars, you know this. If you've joined us for the first time, the reason why I'm going through the SRA sample is because a lot of colleagues and a lot of candidates have said that it's great that the SRA is giving us a sample. It would be even better if the SRA gave us the actual past papers, but that's a fight for another day. So it's great that they're giving us the sample. However, they tell us what the answers are, but they don't tell us why. And I think what is crucially important for your preparation is to understand why the correct answers are correct and why the wrong answers are wrong. The whole problem about MCQs in the style of the SQE is that they always present you with something that is taking a great deal of time and then confuses you as to what the potential answer is going to be. All the questions for the SQE are scenario problem-based questions. They are not the sort of questions that you might have come across if you were at law school, where we kind of went, which case best describes this legal principle, or what do you know about this case? Or something very simple like which statutory provision says this, or which statute would be appropriate to resolve that legal problem. Unfortunately, the questions are not that easy. All the questions for the SQE are scenario based, and they present you with a series of 5 possible answers. Out of these 5 answers, now how this normally works, you're going to have a couple that are admittedly off, that they will be either talking about something that is not in the fact pattern, or they will be cleanly wrong. And then you're going to have about 3 out of the 5 that are plausible. So your job, and it's a difficult job, is to figure out which one of the plausible answers is closer to the best answer. And remember that we're not looking for a 100% correct, unassailable answer. No, we are looking for the answer that gets closest to what the question is asking. It might not be perfect. So you basically need to go through this process where out of your 5 options, you eliminate the irrelevant ones, right? Or you eliminate the directly wrong ones. And then out of the ones that seem plausible, you sort of prioritize them, which one gets closer and which one does not. Do not look for straight wrong answers. They're all going to have something to do with it. They're not going to be giving you stuff that are clearly wrong that you can discount super easily. Yeah. So you're looking for the best possible fit, the closest possible fit. This is your job. Now, why is this so challenging? Both because the scenario is quite chunky and it's going to take you some time to read through, but also because the 5 possible answers are also quite lengthy. And you've got less than 2 minutes to get through this. So being able to remember the area of the law, to have an impression of what the correct answer might be, to validate that impression by choosing from one of the available options, and to do this in less than 2 minutes is a very difficult task. And of course, it is a ridiculously artificial task. So when they're telling you that this is to test the day 1 outcomes, what the solicitor is supposed to do on the first day on the job, trust me, a solicitor on the first day of the job is not going to be asked questions like that by the client, right? It's not that you're just sitting there and somebody jumps right at you and goes, what's the correct level of tax? It's like, no, okay, nobody works like this. But this is what the SRA decided to do, and this is what, in their opinion, approximates the knowledge base for a day 1 candidate. So, but here we are, okay? So I know that I have this desire to rant and complain about this, yes? You probably, if you're regulars in these live streams, you probably hear me inserting about a 5-minute rant and complaint somewhere in there, but I gotta say it, okay? But anyhow, so we have made it all the way. We've covered the first 24 questions from SRA sample FLK1. Yeah, SQE1 FLK1. This is the sample that we're working from. Go to the SRA website. You can download all these questions. I'm going through them in the sequence that they're presented. So if you want to work on them in advance of the live stream, then you've got the opportunity to see them in advance. Don't look at the answer before you attempted it yourselves. Yes. And also, I wanted to mention this. I came across a discussion on Reddit where some people were saying, well, don't do the SRA sample because it's not that great. It's not representative of the exam. The ones from the prep schools are better. I disagree with this. How do the prep schools know? The one from the SRA sample is taken out of the questions from the people that they write the questions for the exam. So surely, if you tell me, why would you think that the SRA sample is not representative and something that somebody did in a prep school, assuming that this is what the exam is going to be like, knows any better? We don't. Since they don't give us past exam papers, the SRA sample is the closest we have to what we think the exam is like. Anything that the prep schools designed for themselves, this is just guessing, okay? That's why we have to work with this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share a set of slides I prepared earlier, so we get to see the questions and go through the questions together. So hopefully I can pick it up. So soon I'm going to drop into a small man in the corner. You see? So now you got like a smaller angry man looking at you and a bigger screen where we're going to have our questions. And we are starting with question number 25. 3 clients decide to go into business together. Yeah, I know this sounds like the beginning of a joke, okay, but that's the SRA. 3 clients decide to go into business together. They each invest equal amounts of capital in the business and agree to share the profits equally. After 2 years, the business has made a loss and the clients no longer believe the business is viable. Have the 3 clients been working in a partnership together? So, options. Yes, because they're in business together and intended to make a profit even though they've made a loss. 2, yes, because they agreed to invest equal amounts of capital in the business. 3, no, because they've not entered into a written partnership agreement. 4, no, because they have not registered themselves as a partnership. 5, no, because they agreed to share profits equally but did not agree how to share losses between them. Now, for the people watching us live, feel free to propose what you think is the correct answer in the chat. And I'm going to tell you in a moment. Now, this is, I'm comfortable with this area because I have been teaching company law and business law and stuff along those lines for the past kind of 10 years and counting, perhaps more. And, partnership law and stuff is something that one would cover. So this is in the area of FLK, business law, business practice and organizations, whatever they call it. Yeah. So what would be our correct answer here? Have the 3 clients been working in a partnership together? The answer is yes. Teresa got it bang on time. Well done, Teresa. Georgia follows closely behind. You guys are gonna have to be quicker at this. I should think of some sort of an award for the person that comes up with the correct answer first. Okay. So yes, you're right, guys. The correct answer is A. They are in business together. It's yes, because they're in business together and intended to make a profit even though they have made a loss. So being in a partnership together means that people are working together towards a common purpose. The ordinary partnership, yeah, not the part that needs pre-registration, like a limited liability partnership, okay? The traditional ordinary partnership that dates back to the law coming from the Victorian era is a matter of fact. You do not need paperwork to set up an ordinary partnership. What happens is that the law recognizes your engagement as a partnership on the basis of what you've done. So more than one person coming together with somebody else in order to carry out a business activity in collaboration with each other will be in an ordinary partnership. Whether they actually succeed in making a profit or whether they suffer a loss is not really relevant. Now, whether they agree to invest equal amounts in the business doesn't really make them partners, yes? Because there are lots of vehicles through which you could contribute to the success of the business without becoming a partner. In that matter, they could becoming shareholders in a corporate, for instance. C is wrong because you don't need a written agreement to form a partnership agreement. Now, it would be a good idea to have an agreement in writing that sets out the rights and obligations of the partners, how they divvy up profits, how they address liabilities, and so on, but it's not a requirement in order to set up the partnership. Registration, again, for the reasons I mentioned, is not a requirement for a partnership. So an agreement as to how to share profits but not how to share losses, again, is not a requirement. Yeah. So you can look at the Partnerships Act for further information on this, but I think this is fairly clear cut. So this has been like a relatively easy one to get our teeth into. Have you guys watched the live stream from last week? So the key is that they intended to run a business. So that's why A is the correct one. Now, if I was writing the question myself, I would not have phrased it exactly like this, but I think the profit motive demonstrates that this is run as a business as opposed to something else. Yeah. But yes, so the main thing is that they intend to run a business, a commercial business, and that's why A is the most appropriate answer from the ones that we've got available. If you have a look at the live stream that we did last Wednesday, those questions were way more difficult. And that's kind of strange that and I'm trying to work out whether it is my familiarity with the topic that gives me this impression that one set is more difficult than the other, or in fact the kind of difficulty and challenge presented in the questions just kind of varies as you're going through them. But I do have the impression that the ones that we're doing this week are a lot easier than the ones that we did last week. So if you haven't watched the live stream from last week, it's available on the replay. So go have a look afterwards, and let me know whether you think those questions were much more difficult. So let's move on to our next question, which is hang on. It's going to be question 26. If I manage to click the right thing there we are. Okay. So this is question now 26 from the SRA's sample. A company has created a fixed charge in favor of its bank over machinery owned by the company and used in the company's factory. The company is solvent. The fixed charge has been correctly registered at company's house. The company now wishes to sell some of the machinery and seeks legal advice on how to proceed. What advice should the company receive in relation to the sale of the machinery? Is it A, the company can proceed to sell the machinery freely because the charge has not yet crystallized? Is it B, the company can only sell the machinery if it does so with the consent of the bank as a charge holder? Is it C, the company can only sell the machinery if the bank is party to the sale because the bank has title to the machinery? Is it D, the company can only sell the machinery with the consent of its unsecured creditors? Or is it E, the company can proceed to sell the machinery once it has registered the sale at company's house? Which one do you guys think is the best answer here? Again, FLK business law. This has to do with security, protecting one from insolvency. Is that type of area, right? So would you vote for A, B, C, D, or E? I should have something. I should have like a kind of jingle or a kind of waiting area while you guys are thinking about what the correct answer is. Maybe I should, should I create? Do you guys like my gnomes? I have populated my office with gnomes, so they keep me company when I'm in between classes. Yes, check this out. So maybe we should have like some sort of a jingle that while you guys are thinking about the answer, we've got the kind of the gnomes kind of walking in front of the screen. Or is that risking making a serious topic too silly? Yeah, what do you think? Are we taking the entertainment too far? Probably we are, and we should keep this stuff more serious. Okay, the correct answer to question 26 is B. The company can only sell the machinery if it does so with the consent of the bank as a charge holder. Yes, Teresa got in there first. It is C. By the way, if you guys are enjoying the show and you would like to see more gnomes and props, you see, I've got those in the office. I don't have these in the house. My wife doesn't let me keep the gnomes in the house. So yes, if you would like to see more props and gnomes, giving like a sort of a gnome themed emoji or something, or or write your preferences in the chat, or if you're watching this on the replay, leave us your opinions on the props in the comments. Right now, why is C the correct answer? Now, what happens generally in business is that people try to find ways to protect themselves from the chance of insolvency of their counterparty. You do not want to be in a certain category of people. Which one is the category that you don't want to be part of? You do not want to be an unsecured creditor. Because if you're an unsecured creditor, it means that you rank last in the line. Everybody else is going to come and pick off the corpse of the corporation that's gone insolvent before you can get there. So by the time they're all done picking, there's hardly anything left for you. sorry for the gross analogy. I was thinking kind of, these cartoons where something is dead in the desert and the buzzards are kind of eating whatever's left. So this is what happens with a company. You do not want to be the unsecured creditor, which is the last of the buzzards to come along. The way that that company law provides to offer some levels of protection is primarily through the registration of charges. And there are two key types of charges. You can have a fixed charge and you can have a floating charge. Now, what are those? A fixed charge is a claim over company-specific assets that the company has right now, and they are identified assets. This is what happened in this case. So the bank took a fixed charge over existing specific machinery. The other type of charge would be a floating charge. A floating charge is not over a specific asset, but it's over a class of assets without identifying what the particular items are. And perhaps it could be a floating charge against all assets that the company owns without identifying the particulars. These operate in slightly different ways. To be operational, both fixed and floating charges need to be registered with Companies House. If they're not, then they're not applicable. If they are registered, if a predetermined event happens, usually the appointment of administrators, it could be some notification to Companies House that triggers this, it could be the balance sheet demonstrating something. There's a variety of things that in this documentation can be classified as trigger events. If the trigger event happens, then the person who has ownership of the fixed charge can come and collect the specified assets. If we're talking about a floating charge that is not yet attached to specific assets, when the specific event happens, which is called the crystallizing event, at that point, the charge comes and attaches on particular corporate assets. Normally, the fixed charge is considered to be more important, more valuable, better protection than the floating charge because it ranks higher on the order of insolvency. When a company goes bust, the first people that get paid are Guarda. Do you guys know that stuff? The people who run the insolvency process, okay? Because if they don't get paid, it's like the accountancy firm or the solicitors that run the insolvency. If they don't get paid, nothing happens. Then we've got secured creditors, which are the people with the fixed charges. Then we've got preferential creditors and the people with the floating charges. Preferential creditors are going to be employees, wages, pension funds, that kind of stuff. And after all of these, you've got the unsecured creditors with the category that you do not want to be one because this is the last buzzard to eat from the company's corpse. Right. So fixed better than floating. Fixed is better than floating because it is more restrictive. What does that actually mean? What does the restrictive actually mean? It means that you cannot change the assets without the consent of the charge holder. That's why option, actually, hang on, Teresa there said C. No, it is B, yeah? Or was this from the previous question? I don't remember. No, it's for this one. So the correct answer is B. And the reason for this is that the charge holder, the one who has got the fixed charge, because the fixed charge is attaching to specific assets, needs to give the permission for the company to change something. They do not have ownership. The company still has ownership over the assets, but the fixed charge holder needs to be consulted. That's why B, the company can only sell the machinery if it does so with the consent of the bank as a charge holder. This is why B is correct. C is incorrect because it says the bank has legal title to the machinery. They do not. A is wrong because it says the company can proceed to sell the machinery freely because the charge has not yet crystallized. That would be the case if we were talking about a floating charge, not about a fixed charge. And the question here is about a fixed charge. D says the company can only sell the machinery with the consent of the unsecured creditors. This is completely wrong, okay? So we can discard this one. E says the company can proceed to sell the machinery once it has registered the sale at Companies House. No, that's not a requirement, okay? The requirement was for the registration of the charge, not for subsequent things that are happening. Right, so we got a couple of questions that are, a couple of potential answers that are wrong. the others that are basically misdirection. Okay, so the one that kind of comes out as the most appropriate one here is B. Then they can sell it, but they need the consent of the bank as a charge holder. Now, I appreciate that if you guys haven't studied that area of the law, or if you're not heard of kind of the insolvency process or anything before, this might come across as completely unfamiliar, but that's how it's meant to work. So perhaps this is a more difficult question. I mean, I don't know. Let me know. Give me a happy emoji if you thought this was a doable question, and give me an unhappy emoji if you think that this was a terrible question that you would get wrong. I mean, I feel more comfortable, but as I told you guys, I've been teaching this stuff for a very long time, so it kind of comes natural to me. Let's see if we can move to our next question. Aha! Oof! A numbers question. You guys like numbers questions? I'm guessing if you are in the practice of law or you're aiming to go into the practice of law, you're terrible in math. Yes? This was an easy, when I was at school back in the day in Greece, this was a very easy way to distinguish the kids who were on a scientific track from the kids that were on a sort of humanities track. Anybody who was half decent with numbers was going on the scientific track. Everybody else who was counting with their fingers, their parents told them you would make a great lawyer, and they were going down the humanities and social sciences track. Yes. I don't know if this resonates with anybody's experience, but this is what used to happen. And as we're talking about numbers, I've got an easy number for you guys. You know what is the easy number? £2.99. You know what you can do? What could you do? What could you possibly do if you had £2.99 and an eagerness to spend it? You wouldn't be able to get a cup of coffee, because even the cheapest coffee these days is worth more than £2.99. However, you could spend £2.99 a month and join this channel. And as a paid member of the channel, then you get a lot of like fancy perks. Yes. You get to participate in members only hangouts that I do, kind of live streams just for this inner community. You get to see all the videos that are coming up that I've got scheduled. You can see them right away without having to wait. And, other bits and bobs that, YouTube puts there as perks. So if you guys would like to, you enjoy these sessions and you would like to support my effort, you can join the channel and pay this $2.99 a month. Otherwise, I'm super happy to see you guys here, and you can continue to attend those Wednesday sessions that will always be free for our community. And also, all the videos eventually are going to be free for everybody. You just have to wait because they're currently on a publishing schedule. So back to our numbers. Question 27 from the SRA's sample of MCQs. A company, the retailer, entered into a contract with another one, the supplier, to purchase 30,000 flat pack boxes at the price of £60,000. The retailer paid a deposit of £20,000. When delivered, the boxes were found to be defective, and the supplier was unable to supply replacement boxes. The retailer rejected the boxes and did not pay the balance of the purchase price. To avoid incurring further losses, the retailer obtained replacement boxes from another supplier for £70,000. The retailer has followed all appropriate pre-action procedures, and the retailer's solicitor is now ready to draft and issue a claim form. Not counting the interest, what sum can the retailer properly claim against the supplier? Yeah. So this is an action. What would this be? What kind of action would that be, guys? It would be an action for breach of contract. Yes, because the goods supplied were defective and they were therefore rejected. So this is a business-to-business deal. We clearly have a valid contract between the retailer and the supplier. What has gone wrong is that the supplier was unable to deliver the boxes at the quality and the state that they were meant to be. We have to work out how to calculate an appropriate remedy. So if we're in breach of contract, the response to a claim for breach of contract is to find a remedy That does what? That addresses the loss that the victim of the breach has suffered. Okay, now remember that breaching contracts is not against the law. Okay, so this is called the theory of efficient breach of contract. If you can breach your contract and do better with somebody else and compensate the victim for any loss that they're suffering, you're perfectly entitled to do this. Okay, so this is, I mean, perhaps ethically you might have some issues with it, but from a point of view of the law, there is no law prohibiting you from breaching contracts. It's not a criminal issue, it's just a civil issue. The consequence of the breach is that it generates an obligation to compensate to the extent that the other party is suffering loss. If the other party is not suffering loss, you don't have to pay anything. How do we calculate what that loss is? And this is where things get tricky, because the majority of students and the majority of SQE candidates will know the principle behind compensation for breach of contract and remedies, but they will find it tricky to actually work out the amounts. We are thinking in terms of remedies, a payment of damages, which is monetary compensation for the loss that the other party has suffered. So the key remedy to the key response to a breach of contract is the payment of an amount of money as damages. How do we calculate the amount? The standard way to do it is forward-looking, to say, you've concluded the contract. Let's get the norms again, okay? So this is norm number 1, concluding a contract. Where would the norm have been if the contract had been properly performed? They would be out here. This has a monetary value, right? They started here, they ended up here. If due to the breach of contract, they only made it this far, so if they were starting from here, they only made it this far, there is a distance to be covered between this point and the camera is reversed, so it's a bit difficult to do, and this point. So when we're trying to calculate compensation, we're thinking, where would they have been if the contract had been properly performed? Where are they now that the contract has not been properly performed? What is the distance between where they would have been and where they're at now? So this is called expectation loss. And this is the key way to calculate an amount of money if you're looking for damages as compensation for breach of contract. An alternate measure would be if you cannot prove where you would have been because your destination is speculative, then you can just claim for expenses. However, for this problem question here, we know where they would have been, okay? What was the objective of the contract for the retailer? The retailer would have a bunch of boxes and they would have paid in total 60,000 pounds. So they would have had 30,000 boxes and they would have paid 60,000 for these boxes. Right. This is where they would have been. Yeah. Where are they now? They don't have any boxes because the boxes did not get delivered, or they got delivered in a state that led them to being rejected. And they've paid 20,000. So they paid 20 grand and they've got no boxes. But this is not the end of the matter, right? Because they obtained the boxes from another supplier. And this is where it gets tricky and most of you are going to get it wrong. You cannot do these things in isolation. You cannot first say, oh, they paid the deposit, they didn't receive any boxes, so they need to return the deposit. You also need to think about what happened next in order for them to end the problem. In figuring out where they've ended up, okay, you need to think about the totality of the transaction. So, what did they want? They wanted 30,000 flat boxes. Did they get 30,000 boxes eventually? Yes, they did. All right, because they bought them from somebody else. How much did they spend? They spent in total 20,000 pounds as deposit for the first guy and 70,000 pounds as the payment of the fee to the other guy. So what is their total spend for the 30,000 boxes? Yeah, 90,000. They ended up with 30,000 boxes, but they had to pay 90,000 pounds to get them. How? This is where they're at. Where would they have been if the contract had been properly performed? They would have had the 30,000 boxes, but they would have paid 60,000. What is the difference between where they're now and where they would have been? 30,000 pounds. They overspent 30,000 pounds. Therefore, the correct answer here is C, that says 30,000. Oh yeah, Teresa, please go ahead. So don't. I mean, this is your safe space. Nobody's gonna judge you if you get the answer wrong, right? And very often, like impression and an initial impression and a hunch is very important in getting the answer correctly. So anybody. Everybody who's watching us live, it would be awesome if you guys kind of contribute to what you think the correct answer might be. There's no judgment for getting it wrong. You know, this is just an opportunity to have a discussion. Yeah. So, is everybody on board with my explanation as to why the correct amount to claim as compensation is 30,000 pounds? You need to take what they already spent as the deposit, what they spent for the replacement boxes, bring all this together, and from that deduct the amount they were meant to have paid at the beginning. Because if you do anything else, you're not really addressing, either you're not addressing the loss properly, or you're overcompensating, which is an even worse problem. So look, if you had said return back the deposit, so the correct answer is D, that says 20,000 pounds, this isn't great because then you're undercompensating your client. The retailer would have ended up spending 70,000 pounds for these boxes overall, as opposed to the 60. So why are they paying 10,000 pounds more? It's the fault of the other guys who didn't deliver properly. If you hadn't done this, and you had said, give me back just the 70, return the 70,000 pounds. It's like, why? Because then you're very significantly overcompensating the retailer. If you give them back 70,000, they would have not only gotten all these books, they would have got the books for free, effectively, right? Or they would have kept the 20 and it would have cost them a lot less. But it's not normal, because you don't want to be in a situation that you're offering them more compensation than the loss that they've suffered, and clearly you shouldn't offer them less. So the various options that's got here that I think might confuse you is either D, that says 20,000, because you might think the deposit was 20, or it might be A, that's got the 70,000 pounds, which is what they paid for the replacement boxes. But both of those are wrong. The correct way to calculate it is, as I said, to take the totality of the situation and then say, how much did they spend all in all for these 30,000 boxes? How much should they have spent if the contract was properly performed? And then ends up with 30,000, the correct answer being C. Right. So that hopefully made you feel a little bit better about the numbers. And I don't know, the majority of the people that I'm dealing with, they freak out the moment they see a number. So hopefully that's not you. Are you confident with the numbers? Give me an emoji that kind of demonstrates the level of confidence that you have in dealing with numbers. By the way, I've got additional videos for all of that stuff. So if you guys go through the channel, I've got a variety of videos for breach of contract and explaining the various methods that we've got to calculate damages for breach of contract. Also a discussion about other available remedies. I can put some, after I publish the video for the replay, I can put some of these videos in the description to guide you guys, but they're fairly easy to find if you have a look around the channel. I mean, contract law is one of the topics that I've covered very well, so I think we're kind of safe there. Okay, let's look at our next question. This is question 28 from the SRA sample. A junior employee at a summer camp for young people has been convicted of an assault on a participant in the camp. The victim is suing the camp organizers for damages for psychological trauma on the basis that they are vicariously liable for the actions of the employee. Which of the following best describes whether vicarious liability will apply? Is it A, Vicarious liability will apply if the employee's act is sufficiently closely connected to his employment. Is it B, vicarious liability cannot apply to criminal behavior? Is it C, vicarious liability will only apply if the assault occurred in working hours? Is it D, vicarious liability can only apply to senior employees? Or is it E, vicarious liability will not apply because the employer obtained no benefit? Okay, this is actually quite similar to the problem question that I ran in my newsletter, I think a couple of weeks ago. If you guys are not subscribed to the newsletter together already, I would encourage you to do so. So just email the word, email on the subject line, the word subscribe to newsletter at glintis.co.uk. If I managed to spell this properly, did I? Newsletter, yes. So newsletter at glintis.co.uk. This is completely free. If you email me with the word subscribe, I'm going to add you to my mailing list. And every Monday, without fail, I'm going to send you an email that's got a multiple choice question, a fresh one for you to attempt. Feedback on the previous week's question as to why the correct answers are correct and why the wrong answers are wrong. Reading resources, links to videos, additional tips and tricks and all of that. And also discount codes and suggestions for services and products and so on. So currently I've got discount codes for Law Drills, which is an AI generator of multiple choice questions, and it's also got mini mocks and generated questions in there, and it's got a law tutor that an AI law tutor that helps. I've got a discount code for Revise SQE, the book titles if you buy direct from their website. So all of these useful things, and of course a link to the study planner if you guys are self-studying. Do we have anybody in the group here that's a self-studier, or are you guys all with prep schools? So if you are self-studying and you're looking for a planner to organize your time that covers the whole of the FLK, looking forward to the January exam, then I've got the study planner as well as a link from the website, from the newsletter. You can kind of download the PDF and print it out and can enjoy it. So you've got the FLK staring you in the face on a daily basis. Okay, so now what do we think might be the correct answer here with the junior employee of the summer camp? Would the assault on the summer camp participant lead to liability for the camp organizers? What do you guys think might be the correct answer? In the newsletter, I had that case where a forecourt employee at what was it? I think it was a Sainsbury's. He started arguing this kind of some racially aggravated thing with one of the customers and ended up kind of beating each other up. And the answer, when he went to court, the court said that Sainsbury's was responsible. So yes, Teresa, you're correct. Thank you. The correct answer is A. Vicarious liability will apply if the employee's act is sufficiently closely connected to his employment. Now, this is the situation where an employee carries out something that does something that causes harm in the context of their employment. And it is not an excuse to say they were not told to go beat up the people in the campsite. Okay? In the same way that if the electrician comes in here to do some work and forgets like a lit cigarette somewhere and sets the place on fire, it's going to be the responsibility of his employer. Yeah, you cannot. It doesn't have to be his job to smoke in the premises. Okay, it's just that he was there in his in the context of him as an employee. He was in the context of carrying out this work. Whether he did it badly and he caused the fire, or whether he did something incidental and he caused the fire, it is still linked to his employment. Now, if he did something completely disconnected, then the employer might be able to avoid responsibility. For instance, if he finished the work, left, and then came back out of hours and set a fire to the building because he decided he doesn't like this place, then that might be enough distance to separate it from the employment. But anything that happens during the context or is incidental to the context of carrying out the work will cause these issues. I also had a video, like a short video explaining the concept of vicarious liability that I published on the site like a few days ago. So you guys are welcome to have a look at that. Why are the other answers wrong? So A is the correct answer. What's wrong with the rest of them? B says vicarious liability cannot apply to criminal behavior. No, that's wrong. Of course it can apply to criminal behavior. What we're interested in is the civil liability consequences of the criminal act, right? So if you commit a criminal act, if you beat somebody up, of course you're going to be prosecuted for battery, but it's not only that. It's like the person, for the loss that they suffered, for their injuries, for their pain and suffering, from kind of loss of work, loss of employment, the stuff that you damaged, all of that, they're going to bring a civil tort claim against you to recoup those losses. So vicarious liability, yes, does apply to the consequences of criminal behavior. So B is wrong. C says it will only apply if the assault occurred in working hours. But not necessarily, okay? Not necessarily. It just needs to be connected to the person carrying out their work. If we're talking about a camp, I mean, in a summer camp, people are there all day long anyway, so the concept of office hours wouldn't really apply. Vicarious liability can only apply to senior employees, says D. No, that's completely wrong, okay? E, vicarious liability will not apply because the employer obtained no benefit. Okay, that's also completely wrong, okay? So it's like, what would the benefit be? So you would only get vicarious liability if they were kind of, beating up the people who their managers have beef with. I mean, I don't know, or kind of stealing stuff from the summer camp tenants in order to give the money to the managers. I mean, no, that's completely wrong. So we've got effectively there can only be one correct answer here because all the others are wrong as a point of law. So for that reason, this is a slightly easier question than the ones we come across. How are you guys with criminal law? Are you managing okay with that part of the FLK? We haven't gotten a lot of questions on criminal law just yet, maybe because this is because this is the part that has to do with FLK1. As I'm moving my way down the questions, we're going to hit FLK2 sooner or later. I do have some videos covering, well, actually, I've got videos covering the entirety of FLK2 as well. I've got quite a few on criminal law and criminal process. So if you guys are kind of struggling with the criminal law concepts, there's quite a lot of material that you can find on the channel already on those. And pay attention to those because this is stuff that I had to study because I'm not that naturally good at FLK2. Yeah. So I had to look that stuff up as I was making those videos. Things that have to do with contract and business law, I can do with my eyes closed. I don't even need to look at any material. But the criminal law stuff, it's been a while since I was a law student. Okay, are we ready for our last question? Give us, if you're enjoying the show so far and the gnomes and the props, give us a thumbs up. So we should do something. If we get a lot of new members joining these streams on account of me doing this stuff, maybe I'm gonna learn to juggle, and then I can throw more gnomes up in the air for you guys. Yes, to increase the entertainment aspect of the get together. So yes, give us, if you're enjoying the show, give us a like. Moving on to the next question. Right. Question 29 from the SRA sample. Yes. Okay, so where are we at? Okie dokie. All right, cool. So, question 29. A solicitor acts for a client in relation to the acquisition of a private limited company. 2 days before the transaction is due to complete, the solicitor suspects that his client will be using the transaction to launder money. The solicitor reports this to the nominated officer, who makes a suspicious activity report to the relevant authority. What action should the solicitor now take? So this is on the boundaries between solicitor obligations and SRA code requirements and criminal law provisions. Yes. So, I mean, when I said before that we come across criminal law in FLK too, I mean, there are the occasional stuff that kind of crops up in these questions as well. Our options are A, proceed with the transaction as the solicitor has made the disclosure to the nominated officer. B, proceed with the transaction only after receiving authorization to do so from the nominated officer. C, proceed with the transaction after a period of 3 working days if no response is received from the relevant authority. D, explain to the client that the solicitor cannot proceed with the transaction as a suspicious activity report has been made. And E, explain to the client that a suspicious activity report has been made and then proceed with the transaction. Okay. So, answer time. What are we thinking here? Which one would you go for? Now, admittedly, if you haven't covered the solicitor's code of conduct and ethics and all of that stuff, and you're not familiar with these areas of criminal law, this might be a tricky one to get your head around. But shall we venture a guess? What should the solicitor do in relation to this suspicious activity? I mean, they've already reported it, but what happens after that? Okay, Teresa saying D. That would be explained to the client that the solicitor cannot proceed with the transaction. Okay, I would be tempted to do that, but unfortunately, this isn't what the requirement is. So this is too drastic. So you don't just automatically tell the client, whoops, I've come across something that looks funky, I've reported it, you're out. So that would be an overreaction to the problem. Georgia is saying B. Yes, Georgia, that B is the correct answer. Why? Because the Proceeds of Crime Act of 2002 creates the obligation that you report to the money laundering officer if you come across a suspicious transaction. And what happens after this, they will investigate and communicate back to the solicitor an authorization so that they're able to proceed, or they will say that this is in fact inappropriate, so they cannot proceed with the transaction. So the decision is not the solicitor's. I mean, obviously, you need to keep the client informed, but the solution is not provided by the solicitor withdrawing from the transaction or refusing to carry out the transaction. The decision is made by the money laundering officer according to the Proceeds of Crime Act. So, A, that says proceed with the transaction after the disclosure is wrong. You don't have the authority to do this. You need to get their answer. C, that says wait for 3 days, and if you haven't heard from them, do it again, is wrong. This is not what the requirement is. D is drop it and don't proceed again. This is wrong because this is an overreaction. E is explain to the client that the suspicious activity report has been made and then proceed. No, you have to notify the client, but you're not authorized to proceed before the money laundering officer has cleared it. So by a process of elimination, perhaps the correct answer, which corresponds to the requirements of the Act, is B. Proceed with the transaction only after receiving authorization to do so. Alrighty, cool. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, and our collection of friendly gnomes, we have reached the end of the questions that I had set out for today. So I'm aiming every week to do sort of, 5, I mean, a minimum of 5. Sometimes we manage to do more if the questions are a little bit short. So I will be joining you again. I hope it's going to be okay. I schedule them always a bit in advance, so you'll see. I'll be joining you again next Wednesday at 1 p.m. for our Coffee Break MCQs. I forgot the mug. So the idea is every time you stop for a coffee, you got your little coffee break, get yourselves the SRA sample, attempt some questions, or attempt the question that I sent with the newsletter, or attempt questions that you're getting from your prep school. But keep this at the back of your heads as a process of continuous engagement. The more of the MCQs you do, the better you get. The more of them you do, the better opportunity you've got to revise areas and to identify areas of the FLK where you might be weaker. So Every time you pick up a mug of coffee, do an MCQ. Make this your habit till you pass SQE1, and then you can finally forget it. All right. So thank you very much, guys, for joining me today. It's fantastic to have people that are joining live, and fantastic to have people engaged in the chat. If you're watching this, give us a thumbs up. If you're watching this on the replay, again, put a comment and let me know how you're getting on, and give us some sort of interaction so the live stream spread to more people and we increase our community. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you guys soon.